Three key takeaways for this episode are: number one, what is trending right now in wine, in e-commerce, in Italian wine specifically? Number two, in a time period in this year, 2024, where we're seeing declines in wine consumption, how are e-commerce players like Wine Access adapting and evolving to the market? And finally, what are some trends that we see on the horizon and coming up in e-commerce and at Wine Access in 2025 in Italian wine specifically?
Hello, welcome to Masterclass US Wine Market with me, your host, Juliana Colangelo. This show has been designed to demystify the US market for Italian wineries through interviews with experts in sales and distribution, social media, communications, and so much more. We will quiz each of our esteemed guests in every episode to solidify the lessons that we've learned from the episode. So sharpen your pencils, get out your notebooks, and join us this week to learn more about the US market.
Hello, welcome to Masterclass US Wine Market. Today, I am thrilled to welcome Eduardo Dingler to the Italian Wine Podcast. Eduardo is the VP of Wine at WineAccess.com. Prior to Wine Access, Eduardo was the Global Beverage Director for the Morimoto Group for nearly a decade. He's also worked at some of Napa Valley's most iconic restaurants and is a professional wine, sake, and spirits judge and journalist. Welcome to the show, Eduardo. It's so great to have you here.
Thanks, Jules. It's quite a treat. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, Eduardo, you're a mainstay. I've been in Italy and all the Italian wine events in San Francisco, so I'm sure many of our listeners have had the pleasure of meeting you. But for those of you who haven't, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your journey into wine.
Well, I was born and raised in northern Mexico, in a city called Torreon, and I ended up moving to Napa 25 years ago, in 1999. One of the curious things that inevitably and serendipitously connected me with the wine world is that right outside of my hometown, it's the oldest winery in America, in the continent. It's called Casa Madero, and it's in this little oasis in the middle of the desert. Now there's about 8 wineries there with some quality-minded goals. And anyway, that always kind of connected me with my grandpa making a little wine in the basement, sourcing grapes from there. Like every other Northern Italian immigrant that moved around the world, they were finding a way to make wine. And that was my intro. My mom says I was probably 6 months old when my grandpa started giving me wine with his finger when nobody was looking, and that inevitably connected me to the wine world. When I moved to Napa in '99, I started I going to school and such, and then started working in hospitality. And some of the places that have made a name for Napa, like Treviño, which is was a staple in the valley, Bistro Don Giovanni, and a few other places before entering the world of Japanese culture and digging into Japan deeply. But yeah, I joined Wine Access just over 6 years ago, and had an amazing time sourcing wines from all over the globe, and a big emphasis on Italy and telling the stories.
Amazing. What a great journey. And I love that story about growing up outside of the oldest winery in the world. How cool is that? And I actually didn't know that was in Mexico. So I think that's probably a fun fact for all of our listeners.
Totally worth looking for it. Yeah, if you come across it, the wines are pretty
amazing.
Fun.
Well, Eduardo, I'd love to talk more about Mexican wine, but today we are going to talk more next time. Exactly. Today we're going to focus on this. We're wrapping up 2024. What's happening in wine right now in e-commerce, and what's happening around the holidays? What are consumers really gearing towards? I think the great thing about you and Wine Access is that you have that direct line to the consumer, so we can gain some really valuable insights. So our 3 key takeaways for this episode are: number one, what is trending right now in wine, in e-commerce, in Italian wine specifically? Number two, in a time period in this year, 2024, where we're seeing declines in wine consumption, how are e-commerce players like Wine Access adapting and evolving to the market? And finally, what are some trends that we see on the horizon and coming up in e-commerce and at Wine Access in 2025 in Italian wine specifically? So for starters, just Eduardo, if you can tell our listeners a little bit more about Wine Access. Who are they? What do you do? What kind of wines do you sell? Just a little snapshot of what Wine Access is.
Absolutely. In a few words, Wine Access started just over 20 years ago, and it has evolved and grown into a curated voice, if you will, of sorts, in the world of wine and beverage overall. What we do is we have three main sources or outlets, if you will. We have our daily offer business, in which we take we take an allocation of a wine and we tell the story with deep content, often some video content, social media, all those different things, and really convey to our members a wine that we're fascinated by and why. And the other outlet has grown over the years very strongly, is the wine clubs. We have over 12 wine clubs in which we're able to showcase wines with a theme, whether it's from different parts of the world or specific to some areas. We have a champagne club. We have some partnerships with Michelin Star and 50 Best Restaurants and with James Beard. We have partnerships with Decanter Magazine, with Sunset Magazine, with a few different ones. And the clubs have definitely gained an entryway to a lot of our members to wines that they otherwise wouldn't have come across. We do this with, again, with video content and a strong narrative. And the other outlet is the online store, which we're very cognizant of producers, price ranges, regions, and we try to offer a wide range of wines with a story as well. And that's basically how we operate. We have a tight but very strong team of very enthusiastic wine drinkers and eager to pass the voice around.
Amazing. So you're doing a lot of different things, and it sounds like the company's evolved quite a lot in the 20 years that it's been around, and especially since you joined it, between the offers, the wine clubs, and then the e-commerce shop. So it seems like you have a lot of different touch points at which you are getting wines to your consumers.
Totally. Yeah, we try to obviously we have a big focus, and some of our strongest following is with seasoned wine drinkers, collectors, people that have been enjoying wines for decades. But also, we are seeing a great entryway into newcomers to the wine world, people that are just beginning their journey, and they're fascinated, they're intrigued, and also we don't want to like put a huge wall against wine and make it elitist or hard to come across. So we try to tell the story, bring it to a level of understanding, and also just make it fun to be around.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So, Eduardo, now that we know a little more about Wine Access, can you tell us a little bit more about what's trending in Italian wine right now at Wine Access?
Well, as you would imagine, some of the big areas and producers are always king. Talk about Barolo and Brunello and such. However, we are seeing, and we love being part of this narrative of small producers, of indigenous grapes, and different corners of Italy. I mean, as we know, Italy is such a vast country with a lot of ever-growing excitement to grapes and very proud regions. So Friuli has had a huge impact in the last few months. Also Piemonte, Campania. We're seeing a strong following on Lambrusco. Actually, as a matter of fact, today we're launched an offer on a Lambrusco, but also Sicily. There's so much energy going around these regions that Italy has become a huge component of our platform.
That's really exciting to hear. I especially love hearing about the Lambrusco. That's fantastic.
Absolutely, you and I are big fans.
Of course. So it's really ranging. Then it sounds like from more entry level price point wines like a Lambrusco, Sicilian wines, and then some of those classics. Are you seeing any differences? Like, are people buying a certain type of wine more through the wine club versus the shop, or is it kind of consistent across the three different channels that you sell through?
It sort of follows an evolution. A good amount of our members sign up for a club, and they're eager to learn about something they don't usually put their money in and know. So they get introduced to certain wines, let's say an Herbalucha de Caluso or something like that, through a club, and then eventually, over a few months, we're able to offer a wine like that to our main audience, and then we see a response to that. So there's sort of like a graduation between them. Also, the store, since we have all these ranges of wines and styles with strong content, people are able to explore that way and buy one or two bottles and then get really hooked on it and get cases and keep growing their fascination for the Italian wine world.
Right, that makes sense. And you mentioned, you're looking at both the classics as well as smaller producers, emerging regions. But Eduardo, when you are looking for wines that you're going to offer through Wine Access, especially for Italy, like what's really top of mind for you as a buyer of this category?
Well, that always depends. Obviously, because of our different outlets, we're looking for different things, but we are always looking for Brunellos from established houses, which obviously those are a sure bet with our more seasoned audience. But small little off the beaten path producers, let's say Alianico from Voltura or something like that. We are fascinated by those wines because they definitely allow us to keep going as an authority in wine and introducing people to different areas, and be like, wow, well, I've never heard of that, let me give it a try. And once they do, they're like, wow, there is a lot going on in a
Yeah,
glass.
absolutely. So, Eduardo, now that we've spoken a little bit more about Italian wine specifically and what's happening at Wine Access, let's talk a little bit more generally. We know we've seen declines in consumption overall in wine in 2024 and the last few years. How are you all at Wine Access evolving to this changing consumer preference when it comes to wine? And what are you seeing as it relates to consumption?
The narrative certainly keeps going that way. Luckily, we have seen, in spite of, the handful of members that kind of were lapsed, and we reached out and they said, well, unfortunately, I do have too much wine in my cellar, or I'm not drinking as much, which does happen, but not as often as you would think. But we are seeing people still playing the game, and on Premiere, for instance, for Bordeaux was a huge success for us. And if you think about the narrative of people saying we have too much wine and we're drinking less, and then selling a lot of wine on a wine from Bordeaux that's not going to be ready for 2-3 years, that is a very hopeful kind of insight into it. And then we're doing these campaigns as well of wines that are not already in the country, and people kind of really supporting those offers and wines that are onboarding in 2, 3, 4 months per se. So that has been pretty. It's a breath of fresh air in many ways, and also a very curious audience, whether it's like an older seasoned crowd of drinkers or a younger generation just looking for content. And one thing that I think it's very important in our industry, it's the storytelling. And it's also we know this next generations, I see it with my kids and stuff. They're more about traveling, and they're about experiences and really getting to know areas. So wine does that in many ways, as you know. It just really transports you to a place, whether you visited or want to visit. When you have a glass of wine in front of you and it's unique and different, that's the best way to showcase, rather than just having a general basic any kind of wine that could be red or white from whatever. Just those wines that really rock through your world and bringing you somewhere. And therefore, when our members or audience are enjoying that wine with their friends or family, they're able to tell those stories. I think that's super important. It's a social currency that's pretty unique to the beverage world.
Yeah, absolutely. I think experience is definitely a buzzword that we hear quite a lot when it comes to the younger consumer, and how we can connect them, to wine in a more engaging way. Considering that Wine Access is primarily, a digital platform and a website, how are you building experience in how you are offering the wines that you're selling for consumers?
Well, investing heavily into the content with the team of writers, and us putting a lot of content and structure and fabric into our offers. Like a lot of the wines that we come across are based on our experiences. Let's say visiting, I don't know, Florence, and coming across this one wine at Enoteca Pinchori or something like that. That you've never heard of, right? And then bringing that story back and securing an allocation of the wine and being able to tell stories like that really connects the dot. Um, and also, we do in occasion in-person tastings with various restaurants across the U.S. For instance, we did an event with Thomas Keller at Per Se. We did one at the Addison in San Diego and places like that, where a small audience gets to come and visit and hear the stories firsthand and try the wines with their favorite restaurants, dishes, and such.
Cool.
I think that's the best way for us to connect with directly and physically with their customers.
So also taking the experience offline and bringing it in person through some of these really unique and special events has been a way to connect with the audience.
Totally,
Yeah.
and super important. And you gain a loyal, long-term audience with those things.
Very, very cool. Are you doing those in collaboration with winemakers and producers ever, or typically more with restaurants? Like, what's the format?
Historically, those have been more with a restaurant, with the chef, with the sommelier. However, we have done some events more specific with producers like Saskia Rothschild came over and did an event with us. We invited a small group, 20 or so people between loyal customers and media. We've done some with Margot, mostly like on the Bordeaux side. But what's to say we can't bring a producer from Italy and do an event like that? We've done them in New York, LA, and San Francisco with great success.
Yeah, absolutely. Very cool. That's something very good to think about. And I think for listeners and any partners, be thinking about your partners in terms of marketing and events that you can do to get your product closer to the consumer and create some of these experiences. So how about the holidays? It's December 13th. So we're just a couple weeks out from Christmas and everyone's doing their holiday shopping. What are you guys seeing at Wine Access for holiday wines?
Well,
what are people buying? Are you seeing some crazy spikes, and what's going on with Italian wines?
we are. We've seen a huge spike as kind of expected for the season, as you know, but we are seeing a huge movement in the sparkling world. Not only champagne, which is a given and it's a very very celebratory thing, but also as we said, like Lambrusco and other sparkling wines from around the world. Prosecco being a big one as well. Um, People are kind of rushing through those areas, but also big hearty wines, Amarone, for instance, and some other wines from like Piemonte. Like we've done some great success campaigns with Pella Verga recently, and also Grignolino, things like that are not super well known, but once people try them and they're like, "Wow, well, this dish can go amazing with the ham, with the turkey, with cranberry sauce." And then when you start leaning more into like the Hanukkah and Christmas dishes, these are aces under the sleeve, and also they're pieces in the middle of the table that evoke conversation, and again, they kind of take you to a different place.
So you're seeing some interest in these discovery wines, which is exciting. You're seeing more people leaning towards that for the holidays.
Yeah, and quite frankly, I mean, we find that super engaging for us, and it's very exciting when people are willing to venture out, grab a machete, and go through the jungle of the Amazon of wine and try new things rather than just saying, "Well, I know the name Barolo or Sancerre or such." It's like, "Oh, cool, there's something else over there. Let's see what it is and give it a try."
Very cool. How about you, Eduardo, personally? What are some favorite Italian wine holiday wines that you're planning to open this season?
Well, where do we begin? I love Franciacorta and Alta Langa. I think those wines over deliver for the price, for the story that are being told. I also love Campania, some of the Falangina, Fiano, and such, even Aglianico. And Sicily, I always lay my hat in Sicily for some Etna Rosso, some Contradas, things like that. And actually a little bit of market too, some verdicchios that are definitely, great to start a gathering and in the middle. Some of those wines definitely always living in our cellar and always ready to go for the holidays.
Nice range there. Very nice.
Yes, we try.
So moving beyond the holidays and looking ahead to next year, what are you seeing as some potential new trends at Wine Access, just in general, not just in Italian wine, but overall? Like, what are some of your expectations for next year in terms of what is going to be a hot category, a hot wine? Just any thoughts? What's your crystal ball gaze for the year ahead?
That's a great question. I mean, we continue to see a trend and foresee a trend in grower producer champagne. We're definitely very invested in the category. Also, I mean, speaking of Italy, some some areas like Orvieto, places like that,
Okay.
I'm very hopeful we'll see a little light in the sun for the next year. At least we'll do our part in telling that story. Some of the coastal wines of Sardinia, for instance, I think can definitely have an impact. And even Corsica, we started to line up some wines from there for oncoming clubs. And Mallorca, when you're speaking about Spanish wines. And I do think, however, Napa Cab is still going to be a huge player in spite of all the narrative that keeps going around. I think it's still gonna have a very strong foothold on the industry.
Okay. So some more emerging regions, Orvieto you mentioned, some island wines as it relates to places like Mallorca where people might be traveling, and then a classic Napa Cab, something that just, it's like a little black dress, doesn't go out of style. So a reliable.
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
let's not forget sake because I think sake is still seeing a huge renaissance.
Yeah, I read something, a headline I saw that sake, we'll see more sake kind of going mainstream and outside of Japanese cuisine. What do you think about that?
Oh, I think it's inevitable. It's already happening across the world. And I think in the US, sommeliers and consumers are starting to see that demand and grabbing it and running with it because I mean, sake belongs in the table just like wine does. And I always talk about Italian wine and sake as a kind of thing to learn. Because if you think about it, in a few decades ago, when Italian restaurants started popping up across the US in the landscape, Italian wine came up with it, right? There was the Fiascos, there was Chiantis, all these wines. And then Italian wine did that leap where it wasn't only served at Italian restaurants, but all of a sudden, steakhouses, French restaurants, all these other places, they're like, whoa, well, why wouldn't we have an Italian wine? And now places across the United States with celebrated wine lists, they have a strong representation of Italy. So
Right.
I'm very hopeful that sake will kind of follow that footsteps of
Yeah,
Italian wine
very
and
cool. So
just in
just
a way.
seeing it proliferate, across different cuisines. What are some pairings that you think? I mean, I know there's such a range of sakes, of course, but maybe some of the more classic sake styles, or if you can name some of the more classic sakes and some favorite pairings
Oof.
that you have.
Well, with the Junmai Ginjo Genshu, for instance, that's usually a floral, undiluted kind of style of sake. You can do some great, just classic tacos, just street food. You can do Indian food, Thai, but also one of my all-time favorite pairings. And actually, this happened again 3 days ago. We went to a pizza. We went to this pretty cool place, and just it was a larger group and we just did some classic pizzas, right? We did like the prosciutto and arugula. We did some margarita. We did some fungi, and I brought a few bottles of sake. And a good amount of this group had never had sake before, which I was baffled to start. But once
Oh,
they tried it with pizza, I mean, those bottles disappeared before any Brunello on the table did, which was to me pretty cool to see. So pizza,
interesting.
sake,
Very
so
cool.
one of my favorite all-time pairings was a cacio pepe with an older age sake, which was just incredibly delicious. So yeah, I mean the possibilities are pretty endless with
Very
sake.
cool. Well, I'm excited to see more sake in menus, and I want to try it with pizza now. That sounds delicious. Well, Eduardo, thank you so much for joining us today. As we wind down today's episode, we'll do our rapid fire quiz that we do at the end of every episode here. Please do your best if you can to answer these questions in just one or two sentences. So, number one, what is your number one tip for mastering the U.S. wine market?
Oof. I would say don't forget the story. don't forget the storytelling, the texture in a wine or any beverage you're excited about or promoting. Sometimes it's not just the price. It's not the price. It's not the region. It's actually why is this wine better and why you should be drinking it.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great reminder. What is something you might have told your younger professional self, if you've been in this industry quite a while, about selling wine in the US?
Oh man, I think something I wow, that's a good question. I would probably say spend more time learning about other regions rather than being focused on some of the major ones early on. I mean,
Mm,
this is something that I have found very fascinating in the last decade or so. But I think talking about 20 years ago when I was a young server, I would have totally said that. Spend more time going off the beaten path and just meeting producers and visiting places that are not your average
yeah,
mainstream.
I like that. That's great advice. And finally, we all travel a lot in this industry, and especially you, Eduardo. You're always off to somewhere great. What is one of your favorite travel hacks or travel tips?
Oh man, I mean, I am a creature of habit. I have my places. I have my favorite Lampredotto place in Florence. I have my favorite place in Paris and all these places. But one of my favorite travel hacks is always spend some time just going into a different spot. And it doesn't have to be super fancy or very street foody. Just go to a place that you haven't read about it, nobody's told you about. Just go in and step in. Random places, do a walk-in, do a just
I love that.
enjoy it. Life, I mean, at least for me, not everything's always planned. I like to keep some open windows of time and getting lost and finding new places, whether it's a wine bar or a little eatery or something like that. You will be so amazed of the things you can learn, the people you can meet at these places.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, leave some time for spontaneity. Not everything needs to be, on the agenda, so to speak. So that's great advice. Well, Eduardo, thank you again so much for being here today. How can our listeners connect with you?
You can find me. I mean, one of the easiest one is social media. Instagram is EDODINGLER, Edo Dingler. And we can share some info that way. You can find me at the Wine Access website and Eduardo at wineaccess.com. But yeah, I mean, I'm always on the road and hoping to talk to more people and spending more time in Italy, even more so than normal. And thrilled to be on your podcast. Very, very cool. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Eduardo. It's great to have you here.
Thank you for joining me today. Stay tuned each week for new episodes of Masterclass US Wine Market with me, Juliana Colangelo. And remember, if you've enjoyed today's show, hit the like and follow buttons wherever you get your podcasts.